All right. So tonight we're excited to welcome from Treehouse Recovery, Karen Willock. And we were supposed to also have Veggie, but he's feeling a little ill tonight. So Karen is the family program director and so much more. Both Karen and Veggie have years of combined experience to share, and so tonight we'll hear from Karen. And they will be talking about things we can expect and should know when our child has finally taken the steps to begin recovery. We welcome Karen, and we're so glad to have you with us again. We've missed you, and many of us have children who enter recovery, and we're sometimes lost as to what our next move is or what to expect. So we're excited to get the information that you have to share with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Terry, and I want to thank you and Vetchi for asking me to come back and share. I was here. We were laughing because I thought I was here in 2019. It was 2021, and I'm sure that all the moms on this call know that one year can seem like 7 or 10. So it's not unusual, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for having me here. And Vecchi is sick, and I let him know it's okay. You know, you don't need to come tonight. I can do this. So let me tell you just a tiny bit about me. I'm be 73 the in September of this year. So I actually came out of retirement to work for Treehouse because I so much uh, enjoy what they do, and um, I just, I just, it meets every expectation I had. For I've worked in the field of addiction since 1984, and this month, um, on February 19th, I'll have 40 years clean. And I was a heroin addict, started very young, was raised by alcoholic parents, became addicted myself, and then got clean in February 19th, 1983 is my abstinence date. I don't drink or do drugs. I don't smoke pot. I'm not green and clean or anything like that. I am clean. So, worked in the addiction field and I retired in 2016. And I knew there's something missing when it comes to treating addiction. And I went through a year-long intern program studying neuroscience and the brain and how to rewire the brain. And that's what happens at Treehouse. And that's why came out of retirement to work for them because of the multiple modalities that they use. The other part of my story that I think really is the most important part, because education does not treat addiction. It helps to know what you're doing, but I couldn't stop doing what I was doing, and that was the problem. And so the other piece of my story is I have three sons. David, who is over 50, also a heroin addict. He's been in recovery now for about 13 years, I believe. Joe, my middle son, who I thought I had an ulcer and I was going to have a baby. He is 35, coming up, just turned 35, and he also a heroin addict. He was raised in my recovery, so he was never around drugs or alcohol, but nonetheless became addicted. And he's been clean. It'll be 4 years in July. And Pete, my youngest, I often wonder when I'm dead and if they Google my name, are they going to hear me talking about them? They probably will, but I'll be dead, and so who cares? Um, so in Pete is bipolar. He's 30. Uh, he is still using. He smokes a lot of marijuana. He grows marijuana. He has a dispensary. He was clean and sober and in recovery until marijuana became legal. And once it became legal, he's been out there ever since. So, um, David, let me just give a little bit of information about how they got into treatment. David, my oldest, I got a phone call that he was being fired and came to find out that he had embezzled from me, had gotten into my checking account, and this was 13 years ago. So although I've been aware of codependency and enabling and all the things that go with that, I hadn't done a whole lot yet. And boy, just remembering those days, I was in such a different place. I was so stressed all the time. I woke up stressed. I woke up in the middle of the night stressed. I couldn't think straight. I had trouble concentrating at work. I totally ignored the people in my life who were available and not using. Um, it was a horrible time of my life. Horrible. And I found out that he had taken a loan out in my name for a car and took the money. There was never a car. And so when I found out what was happening, which all kind of happened by accident, I pressed charges. And he went to treatment very begrudgingly. But he got into treatment and he stayed in treatment. And um, and he's been clean ever since then. He had tried many times to get clean, most of which I didn't know about. There was a big disconnect between him and I because I was using until he was 12, and I just was not a good mother. Um, my addiction was first, not him, that's for sure. So there was a very big disconnect between him and I. And I'm happy to say that's different now. I had a lot of guilt and what I call toxic guilt, which is taking responsibility for someone else's actions or behaviors and thinking it's mine. And that's toxic guilt. Real guilt is when I've done something wrong and I regret it and it helps propel me to do something different. That's what David's relationship with me did. It propelled me. I had regret, but toxic guilt is that thing that grabs you and slimes you. It pulls you down. It's like morbid reflection. It's a horrible place to be. So my relationship with him is very much restored. And then I had these two other boys when I was 5 years clean at the time and had them. And I got to tell you, I still didn't know how to be a mother. I was still at a loss. And for sure, the thing that wasn't going to happen is there was going to be no drugs or alcohol in my house, and there wasn't. They were raised in 12-step meetings. They, that's just how it was. And they weren't around any active addiction. We lived in Silverton, which, is full of drugs, just like every city, but a very nice place to live. And Joe started using and Pete started using both around the same time. Joe, I believe, has started. I don't really know because I've never really heard his story, except in little pieces, but I believe it started when he had a injury and got on opiates. And then from there off he went. And uh, so, you know, he started using pills and then heroin and that's what he used. He was in and out of my life. He was missing at times. He had been on probation at the age of 16 and was on and just got off probation. It'll be 2 years ago January now. It was 2 years in January since he's been off probation. And he was my so what I want to talk with you guys about is when they go into treatment. Joe went in twice. The first time I picked him up, I micromanaged. He went to the treatment center I worked at. I was in control. And I don't think he really wanted to go to treatment, but I trapped him, kind of. And he went. And his fiance, Stephanie, did not go. She went to detox and then she lived with her mom. And it was just he probably used while he was in treatment when I think about some of the times that we left there. And he did okay. He liked it and he used the day he got out. And they ended up living in a RV, like a lot of young people are these days, living in an RV, and it was filthy. When they got clean, they were still living in it. Right before they got clean, and in between the first treatment center and the second one, God, I did some crazy stuff back then. One of the things I did is I was trying to find a place, a home that would let them live there that was clean and sober. I contacted, and I know a lot of people, and I contacted a lot of people. I live over in Beaverton, and I drove clear out to Gresham and met with this couple who rented, they were in 12 step and rented rooms to couples. And, and I was so desperate to get them a place to stay that I thought would make them stay clean. And I talked to them. The guy I had, he was on board with me, and the wife, women kind of have this sixth sense, right? And she had this sense like something's not right. And she said no. And I called other people I knew. And I mean, I was frantic. And I know people on this call know exactly what I'm talking about. When I was trying to solve that problem and make sure he stayed clean when he got out, I was frantic. And that's what I did. I was frantically looking. And I finally found somebody, and they didn't go there for 6 days because they were using. And then they moved into that house, and he was sneaking out at night. They lived in filth. And when they left there, they went and got their RV out of storage. The tires were blown. It was just and who do you think helped try to fix everything? Me. I kept talking to him about getting a job, and I was supplementing money. This is me, who is an alcohol and drug counselor. And if I was sitting in my office talking with somebody, I would say, don't do that. But I was doing it anyway. How do we know we have an addiction? Is we don't want to do something and we do it anyway. That's an addict with substances or me as a codependent. I didn't want to keep doing this, and I couldn't stop from doing it. That in a nutshell is addiction. And so he stayed at this house, and it didn't last long because I don't know if she was using or not. She never spoke a word to me, but he was. And they ended up getting kicked out. He had charges again, and he was trying to get into drug court. That's the other thing, is that I know people in Marion County, and I talked to him about getting him into drug court because I know the high level of monitoring that goes on. So I'm micromanaging. I hope that you can kind of see that what I'm doing is I'm trying to pave his road to success. I'm helping. I'm doing it. I'm taking care of it. I'm lining things up. Even before he thinks about it, I'm lining it up. And I got two attorneys, and the one attorney said I paid for the attorneys, of course, thousands of dollars after I had just paid thousands of dollars for treatment. And they said, he's not interested in drug court. And then he found he had a positive UA with his probation officer, and he got kicked out of the house he was living in. I'll never forget that call either. And I know all of you guys know these calls that you get, and your stomach drops, and your hope is dashed. Once again, it's like everything just drops. And they went and got this RV out. I paid for a motel for a night. They got the RV out. This seems like years ago. Maybe that's why I thought I talked in 2019, because it was such a nightmare year. And they took this RV, and I think they were trying to stay clean. I don't really know the true nature of what was going on with their addiction, but I sure know what was going on with mine. I asked him to just tell me the truth. Promise me you'll just tell me the truth. Let me find you a job. I found him jobs that he blew out of and didn't show up for. I gave him money. I bought groceries. I would go over to this RV that was in this. They were living on the streets, and then I found a park that would take crappy RVs like this, and it's because it's just a drug den, and it's full of people that are drifters, for lack of a better word, and they lived there for 2 years, and or a year, I can't remember, but it was a long time, and the rent was reasonable, $4.95 for the space, which I paid most of the time, and they were always being robbed. And you know what? They haven't been robbed once since they got clean. Not once. Not one time have they been robbed. So, what I'm thinking about, it must have been in 18 that he went to treatment. I'm just so terrible at dates. I'm sorry. That's my dyslexia showing up. He's been clean 4 years ago. So it has to be about 5 years ago that he'll be 4 years in July. So it's got to be 5 years ago that he was in treatment. So it had to be like 16 or 17, because I retired from there, and then he went to treatment there in 17. So anyway, they dumped the garbage out of this RV at one point, and it was 600 pounds of garbage that they were living in. 600 pounds in a very small RV. And I was blind. I wanted him to be clean so bad that I was looking at him with those eyes. One time we went to play bingo in Salem, and he was nodding out so bad. He couldn't even hold his head up. He couldn't push the buttons on the machine. And I thought he had diabetes. He didn't have diabetes. And my wife said to me, Karen, I think he is high. I don't think it's diabetes. We laugh about that now, but, and I know you guys know what I'm saying. I was so sure that that was it. I was so sure. I didn't want it to be that he was back shooting heroin again. I didn't want it anything but that. I'd rather have him have a terminal illness than that. And um, so 4 years ago, July, he was, they were watching our house, because he was doing fair. Wasn't, oh, and I drug him to meetings. I found him a sponsor. Oh my God. I took him places where he would be exposed to people in recovery. Do you see what I'm saying? I was more invested in his life than he was. And when they were watching our house, and uh, they were coming up apparently at 1 or 2 in the morning. I was down in California for a brief time with a friend of mine, and they got arrested. And I get a text on my phone. There's an app that'll tell you when your family members are arrested. And you can email me if you want to know what the app is, because I had it on my phone and I got that Jay Willock had been taken into custody. And my stomach dropped. I tried to call Stephanie. She didn't answer. My friend that I was down there for was in the ER having seizures. It was just a horrible day. And come to find out, they had been arrested, and in Clackamas County, which I've told clients for years, if you're going to get arrested, drag yourself out of Clackamas County, because Clackamas County is a very intense place. And Stephanie got arrested and Joe got arrested. And I had to find somebody to go down and take care of the dogs and feed them. And it was Lisa was working out of the country. I didn't even tell her for a while because I didn't want her worrying about what was going on. And I made so many bad decisions. And um, and so they got arrested. Stephanie stayed in for a week. I didn't do anything. In the past, I would have tried to bail them out. I was actually kind of relieved that they were arrested because I knew if they were in jail, they couldn't overdose, because Joe had overdosed multiple times. And about a week after, Joe was in Clackamas County Jail for 3 weeks, and Stephanie got out after a week. Joe was looking at 3 years in the penitentiary. And Stephanie, it was her first offense, so to speak. And so she got out. She went to apparently to her grandmother's, and her grandmother and her called me, and she asked for help. And I was able to help her get she came over to the house, stayed with us. I helped her get in to see a doctor to start her detox, and I helped her go get into a residential women's program. The night before, and then Joe called during that time, and he said, "Mom, I'm looking at 3 years." And I said, I know you are. And I didn't get an attorney. I didn't bail him out. I didn't do any of that. And Betsy and I were laughing a little bit tonight when we were talking about his being ill, and I was telling him about Joe, because I asked Joe, well, let me finish. I get kind of, God, I hope I'm making sense here. So the night before at 11 p.m., the night before when Stephanie was supposed to go to treatment the next morning, August 8th, they let Joe out of jail. And he calls, and we drove to pick him up. And I said, "Stephanie, if you guys are not going to go to treatment, I will drop you off, and the two of you can do what you need to do." And she said, "I am not going to do that. I'm going to treatment." And then I picked Joe up and told him that he would have to be in treatment by the end of the next day. And I can help with that. But I was not willing to pay for treatment. I called Betsy. Betsy talked to Joe about sober living, and he ended up getting into a state-funded program in Portland, because I was tapped financially. I had no more money left to spend on these kids. And he got into treatment. And he finished successfully. He lived in sober living for 2 years. Um, uh, a year ago, July, they moved into a house, a manufactured home. It was affordable for them. He's been working and self-supporting most of these almost 3.5 years. In the beginning, he had never worked for more than a day or two. He had a horrific police record. Lots of felonies for possession, distribution, failure to appear, driving while suspended. He had a lot. Probation violations. And so he went to, we started going to court, and I would drive him there. Billy, Kim's on here. Billy actually took him once, and went to court with him, and everybody thought Billy was his attorney. And then they saw this public defender show up. Billy probably could have done a better job. And that was during COVID. It was all that kind of nasty time then. And he had his court appearances, and fast forward to the last one. And when we showed up at court, he gave me his watch and his billfold, and he was sure they were going to lock him up. The prosecutor was asking for 3 years, And I knew the judge that was listening to his case. I was sitting in the last row of that courtroom, and he said that they wanted 3 years, and he said after looking at your record, I would have to agree. And Joe was a house manager at the halfway house he was at. He was working at not a 7-Eleven, but it was in Portland, like a Quickie Mart or something. And he was paying his own bills. Stephanie lived with us for 2 years and rented a room from us and worked as at the Fred Meyer's down close to our house. And the judge said, they want to give you 3 years, and I'm on board with 3 years. I'll give you an opportunity to talk. On the way there, I didn't tell him what to say. I didn't tell him how to navigate this. I didn't do anything. Nothing. I just kept myself quiet. And he did a nice job with the judge and said, I actually deserve more time than 3 years. But I am going to continue to do what I'm doing, whether I'm in prison or not. But I am self-supporting. I do have a job. I'm living in a halfway house, and I'm moving in a recovery direction. And that judge shocked me when he said, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to put you on bench probation. I'm not even wasting probation's time for a year. And if you come back into court, you will just go, it'll be from here to prison. And he released him. Now, I had paid other attorneys that got him off. And I remember when we walked out of there, way back when he went to this other treatment program, and he clapped and he was so happy. And it's like he beat him. This time he walked out and he said, I'm humbled. I thought, yeah, I get that. So when I was thinking about this topic, and I don't know how many of your people are getting out of treatment, but it's not an easy thing to navigate. And but I asked Joe. I said, Joe, what what's helpful and what's not? This is the text he sent me. He says, he said, it was really a great text. He says, support with things around rebuilding, distance to grow into your own, but family time. Not micromanaging, but getting connected with someone who could help me. Not condemning mistakes, but providing support to get back on track. Helping when asked, but not forcing help. Support for the things that are important to me, relationships, work, family, etc. Rewarding for a job well done. He said, I meant to send this earlier, Mom, because I asked him yesterday to think about it. He says, your meeting is going to go great. Just tell them to do what you did this last time and not what you've done most of your life. I thought that was spot on. And so I told him he's adorable and he's my favorite. So getting connected, I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, getting connected with people who can hold you accountable. And he listed the people that he uses. No one wants to be held accountable by their mom, but they're open to it from someone that's relatable and understands their situation. He said, I'm not really sure how someone that's not already in the field can plug someone into sober companions, but it was encouraging at the halfway house to find people that wanted to be sober so that I can be what they are. Encouraging and cultivating relationships and sober living is important. And so anyway, that's what he was talking about is I started going to CODA I stopped focusing on him, and I have been for quite some time focused on myself, learning how to calm my limbic system down, learning to remember that the only thing I have control over is how I think, feel, and behave. That I don't have to answer the phone always, because I still have this other son that's very unpredictable, and I can weigh and measure how and when I talk to him. And I'm learning, and I hope to learn until the day I take my last breath, more and more how to be a support without being too much or too little. I can tend to go to extremes where I'll help you, help you, help you, help you, or I'll wipe my hands of you and I will amputate you. And there's a middle ground. And what it's called in recovery is a position of neutrality, where I am in touch with who I am, not who you are. And how did I get there? I got there by being emotionally exhausted, in a state of despair and hopelessness, physically sick, mentally obsessed, and spiritually bankrupt. That's what we call a codependence bottom. And mine happened the day I was laying in bed, and this was years before. And if there's anything I want to tell you, this doesn't happen fast. It's this change that we make is a long process sometimes. And I was laying in bed, and this was years before Joe went to treatment the first time. And he had OD'd again. And I'd gone to church and I'd seen that we had a cemetery. And I didn't know that before then. And I thought, oh my God, God's preparing me to bury him. And I remember laying in bed and just hitting my bottom. And the next morning I said to people that I go to for help, when are you feeling too much? And they said, when it incapacitates you. And I started doing my work. I started grieving instead of being angry. I would get in the shower every morning for 10 or 15 minutes and cry. And you know what? I only cried about 2 minutes, maybe. And then I could go about my day. I did that for almost a solid year because I had so much grief, and not just from my kids. So much grief for things that should have happened that didn't, and things that didn't happen that should have. And I grieved and grieved until I wasn't grieving anymore. I can handle the sadness of today. I studied, I read, I listened, I went to people who were doing it. I was, that's what I'm trying to say is there's like this how to hands off pays off. How to, see, there was a sheriff car that just went by here. We live on a dead end. We've moved since the last time I talked here. And all of a sudden, in the past, my stomach would have dropped thinking they were coming to tell me that one of my kids is dead. That's how triggered I would get. I was in a constant state of triggered. So I go to meetings, I work the steps, I talk to people who are like me. The proper use of the will. I refuse to allow shame to keep me from living. I refuse. I listen. I've learned how to take direction. Hands off pays off. Listen for a reasonable recovery request. Don't help unless someone asks you. Be aware of what I'm saying. Remember, the only thing, and every time I think this, my body relaxes. The only person I have any control over is me. Because I'm telling you, If we could get them clean and sober, I would be out of work because nobody tries harder than a mom. Nobody. Nobody. And when I finally realized I have no power, I became empowered to take care of the one person that was able to take care of, and that was me. And I'll tell you, I can be available for all of my kids and myself in a very much more healthy way. So I know we want to have time for a few questions, and I can go on and on. So I'm going to stop. And I just really appreciate you listening. And yeah, I do.
Oh, you're awesome, Karen. You always give us such great information, and I was listening to you, and I'm thinking, that's me, that's me, that's me. Check, that's me. And I think there's so much similarity in what you share. It makes us obviously feel we're not alone, and we're facing the same things, although everyone's loved one may be different in certain ways. So we will take a couple of questions for Karen if you want to type those into chat. Let's see if we have one already. We have hearts from Nancy. Nancy says, yay, she loves it. And so if you have a question, just type it into chat and then I'll read them to Karen. And while we're waiting on those, so Karen, is it your opinion that if they decide that they want to go into recovery and to go into treatment, should the work be 100% up to them to get in, to work
No,
towards finding the place? No? Okay.
I don't think so. First of all, they're usually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so their ability to find a place is impaired. So this is how I decide. If it's actions in recovery, I will help and walk with them. But what we want to do is get you out of the middle and get somebody else into the mix.
Right. I think
If
that's
they
where
hate
I am.
detox and withdrawal, right. If they hate detox and withdrawal so much, why do they continue to relapse? Because they have a disease that is residing in limbic system. There's a great YouTube. It's by Dr. I forget her name. I should look for it while we're on here. And it's the Neuroscience 101 of addiction on YouTube. And I'm telling you, that's why. If I just stop using, like I tell people, if you want to stop drinking or using, slap a cop because you will stop. They will lock you up. But
Mm,
that is not recovery. So I'm a firm believer that somebody has to have time for their brain to heal. Addiction is a brain disease. It's not
mm-hmm.
because they're jerks, although they act like it.
Right. And Nancy said, I'm staying hands off. So thanks for sharing your story. I needed to hear this tonight. And Maria says, my daughter has been in and out of prison this last year. I'm her daughter's legal guardian. I find it hard to find the balance in hands off and touching base with my daughter. Is it beneficial to pursue her and make the connection or leave it up to her?
Well, first of all, when we get a fix, we get that sense of ease and comfort when we send the text, I love you. And when we hear back, one of the things that my kids, um, they never had a chance to miss me because I was all up in their world all the time. I'm not now.
Mm,
And I have to watch myself. What is my motive for reaching out? When he was on the streets, I wanted to know he wasn't dead. That's why. And then I would get
right.
a minute of, oh, okay, it's okay. Followed by, it's not okay, 20 minutes later. So what if you first of all, if she wanted to call you, she would, even if you didn't text her. I bet she's gotten a hold of you when you didn't want to talk to her. So what if you just maybe cut it down to twice a month you reach out? or maybe once a week. Start there. We want to look at doing 1%, and not 100%. Just start. And so maybe a couple times when you think about calling, look at what you were thinking before that. Were you making up a scary story? Were you missing her? I don't know. Maybe think about what was going on before you thought about texting. Because you're her daughter's legal guardian, doesn't mean anything really, quite frankly. I mean, it's not going to stop addiction. But hands off is an accumulative thing. The only pain I'm fixing and the only loneliness or support I'm giving when I call or text or fix is relieving my pain, because I cannot relieve another human being's pain.
Right.
And with Nancy, there are lots of sober livings around that have accountability. So if you email me, my email's in there, Karen@treehouserecovery.com. I can at least give you some resources. Oxford houses are universal across the states. And the longer they stay in there, the better. And I'll tell you why they don't want to, because they're drug screened and they're accountable.
Absolutely. Okay, so Karen, one thing that I think is important to this is what caught me most this time, but it was all great. What you said was, or what hit me was, with everything that you have been through in your life, with first handling your addiction and long-term recovery, and then going into the field, with your license and counseling and those kind of things, you still feel the same way we do. And
Yeah,
with all of your knowledge and all of your education, you still slip. And I think that it's very important for us to understand that as moms, that it may not be, we grow and we get stronger as much as long as we continue to work on our recovery. But
right.
I don't know that it will ever just totally disappear. Something could set us back really easily too. And I think that's normal. And to
It
realize
is,
that.
it is, it is normal. And my goal is to reset as quickly as possible. It used to be when something would happen, it would consume days or weeks
Mhm.
of my life. And there's sometime I'll come on here and talk about, there's this site, it's called Heart Math, HEART, capital MATH. They teach all kinds of techniques on how to reset, how to calm yourself so that you can bring positive, solid energy to the situation instead of hysteria.
That's good. Well, we went through the questions. So, Karen, before we let you go, I want you to give us your definition once again. I wrote it down, but I want to make sure everybody hears this, because this is another explanation you offered us that was something I've ever heard put the way you explained it, was what toxic guilt is.
Okay. Toxic guilt is when I take responsibility for something that was not mine. And a way you can look at this is you can ask yourself, would I think a friend of mine who did this did something wrong? Because we think we've done, and a lot of times our folks will tell us, it's your fault I'm this way. You did this, or you that, and you this. Blame, 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 blame. And my childhood, and I always say, you're right, your childhood was a shit show. You nailed it. And unfortunately, I can't fix it. So, real guilt, and this is how I know I'm dealing with real guilt. Real guilt is I've done something that I regret, and it helps me move forward. Toxic guilt holds me in morbid reflection.
Mm.
What a bad person I am, what a screw up I am, I didn't do it right. And know that as parents, we are always going to second guess ourselves because that's what we do.
Mhm.
So, toxic guilt versus real guilt. Toxic
Mhm.
guilt is like a gerbil run.
Right.
So I'm taking responsibility for something that is not mine. It wasn't my behaviors nor my choices. I had copied this thing I was going to read. I don't know if we have time. Do you think we do? It's probably like 2 minutes.
Sure. Sure.
So it's called Gift Limits. Once upon a time, there lived a man who was given a great deal of thought and effort to determine what he wanted from life. Then one day, a door of opportunity opened for him to actually live his dream, but the opportunity would only be available for a short time, and he would have to embark on a long journey. This is our life, really. He
Mhm.
began walking, growing more and more excited as he envisioned his future dream of becoming a reality. As he hurried along, he came to a bridge high above a dangerous, rapid flowing river, Addiction. As he started across the bridge, he noticed a person approaching him from the opposite direction. The stranger with the rope wrapped around many times around his waist. The stranger began to unwrap the rope as he was walking towards the traveler. Just as the two men were about to meet, the stranger said, "Pardon me, sir, would you be so kind as to hold the end of this rope for me?" Without thinking, almost instinctively, that's us, right? We don't think, we launch. That's what I said. Launching is my sport. I wish I could lose calories with it. Without thinking, almost instinctively, the traveler reached out and took the rope. "Thank you," the other man said, and then added, "Two hands now, and remember to hold tight." At that point, the stranger jumped off the bridge. That's addiction. Think about your relationship with your kid. It is like they're dangling on a rope and you're hanging on for all you're worth. The strong pull from the now extended rope was so strong it almost dragged the traveler over the side of the bridge into the treacherous river below and died. The traveler shouted over the railing, "What are you trying to do? Just hold on," he said back. This is ridiculous, the man thought, and began to try to haul the stranger up, but the task was beyond his strength. "Why did you do this?" he yelled. "Remember, if you let me go, I may surely die." "But I can't pull you up. I'm your responsibility. I didn't ask for it. If you let go, I'm lost." The man began to look around for help, but no one was in sight. He began to think about the predicament. Here he was, eagerly pursuing a unique opportunity to fulfill his dream, and now he was being sidetracked for who knows how long. "Maybe I can tie the rope off somehow." He examined the bridge. No such thing going on. Again he yelled, "What do you want?" "Just your help." Oh God, I heard that so many times. "How can I help? I cannot pull you in, and there's no place to tie the rope. While I find someone else who could help you. Just keep hanging on. My life is in your hands." The man was stumped. If I let go, all my life I will regret I let the stranger fall to his demise. If I stay, I'll never reach my dreams. Either way, this will haunt me forever. Time passed, no one came. Finally, a new idea came to him. "Listen," he explained to the man hanging below. "I think I know how to save you." He could not pull the stranger up with his own efforts, but if the stranger would help, by wrapping the rope around his waist again and again, causing the rope to shorten, together they could. But the dangling man had no interest. "You mean you won't help? I can't hold on much longer," he said. "If you don't, I will surely die." At this moment, a revelation came to the man on the bridge, an idea that until this moment he could not consider. "Listen carefully," the man said. "I mean what I am about to say." The dangling stranger looked up, hopeless and despondent. "I will not accept the position of choice for your life, only my own," the man said. "From this moment on, I give you the power of choice for your life back to you." And for us, with us, it means giving them the dignity of their own choices. I mean, simply, it's up to you. You decide your future. I'm willing to be the counterweight. You do the pulling and bring yourself up, and I will tug some from up here. The man on the bridge braced himself to be counterweight. You cannot mean what you say, the stranger shrieked. You would not be so selfish. I am your responsibility. What could be so important that you would let me die? After a long silence, the man on the bridge said slowly, I accept your choice. I remember thinking about that with Joe. I have no ability to keep him alive. It's his choice. He let go of the rope and continued on his journey.
Mm,
You
that's
know,
powerful.
that's, mhm.
It really is. It's interesting to hear it put that way, and it just kind of sums it up. Well, Karen, we thank you so much for giving us your time and for all your wisdom and everything you share with us, because it certainly helps us and kind of keeps us hanging in, and it just gives us relatable stories that we can all grow from. But we really do
Hang in.
appreciate your time and
You're
everything
very
that you're
welcome.
doing, and you're fighting hard for addiction, and we appreciate more than that. We just want to thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.